Nodding? Okay, awesome. Are we ready in the back? Okay, very good. Brian, you ready?
Absolutely.
Okay, let's go. All right. Good afternoon, and welcome to this presentation of how SharePoint is being used to manage content at the world's largest airline. I'm Denise Wilson, Senior Manager of Platform Engineering.
I'm Brian Culver. I'm a Microsoft Certified Master. I'm a SharePoint Solutions Architect.
So I could talk about SharePoint at United Airlines for about 6 hours, and we have a great story to tell, so fasten your seatbelts and put your tray table in the upright and locked position. Okay, who are we? We are the new United. We represent a merger of two of the world's largest carriers, Continental, the 5th largest, and United, about the 4th largest, roundabout. And we are now the world's largest airline. We have 5,800 flights per day, 371 global airports, and about 87,000 employees. Our CEO says that our working together culture is the #1 factor for success in our merger integration process. And SharePoint helps us directly, in very direct ways, support that unification process. Okay, here's our route map. These are the 371 cities. It is a highly distributed operation to coordinate, 24/7, of course. Fun fact, we fly 4 million people a year to Hawaii, 20 flights a day. Sign me up. Okay, how do we get started in ECM with SharePoint 2010 at United? The genesis of this effort was the legal department e-discovery and record retention policy. They wanted to enforce that. The original plan was to upload 10 terabytes of content from our file shares and tag it as it was moved into SharePoint. So that was going well. And meanwhile, the operations dashboard and alert system was being rolled out, and that was extremely successful. I'm going to demo that for you in a few minutes. And just to set the stage, when this was rolled out, the operations guys on the floors were cheering and high-fiving. They love it. So I'm going to show you that. So the ECM rollout was in process when the merger was announced. So we're happily doing our SharePoint thing, doing great content management, doing great applications. But will SharePoint survive the merger consulting swim lanes and wall walks and selection of systems? Well, the legal merger was October 1st of 2010, and my VP called me a couple weeks later and he said, hey, can we move the 1,300 documents from the consulting e-room over to our internal SharePoint? Of course we can. It has been non-stop ever since. We established domain trust between the networks, between the two carriers, and we can bring in a United user or a Continental user and into the same SharePoint site collection or document library, boom, we're collaborating. So instead of email attachments being mailed around or, oops, I can't get to your file share, we are collaborating and working together. So the subtitle of this presentation could be United Loves SharePoint. Okay. Why SharePoint 2010? We're collaborating, we're managing content, we're moving happily along in 2007. Why would we want to move to 2010? In a word, Tier 1 redundancy. So in early spring, we had this little bitty issue where a third-party tool allowed a user to create a data condition that caused a looping scenario, and it shut down our application pools, and the platform was up and down all night. We were on the phone, you know how it goes. And so at 6 o'clock in the morning, my VP called me, the same one who asked me to move the documents over, and he says, make this a Tier 1 application. What does that mean? That means a SharePoint 2010 farm and 2 data centers for redundancy, and of course, at the same time, we get the improved out-of-the-box functionality for administration for 87,000 users, security, and all those things that you have to manage for all those users. BCS functionality in 2010 is vastly improved to leverage all those existing data sets that we have across Continental and United. We don't have to reinvent the wheel. We can now expose those and use those in SharePoint. Of course, in 2010, your single source content types and site columns. In 2007, we had to replicate or synchronize a site column across site collections. For example, if you're in legal or marketing or technology, we all fly to the same list of airports. but we couldn't use the same list until we copied it across. Now, with the content type hub, the managed metadata store, we can, and term sets, and we can manage metadata fields, we can use one list of airports, single source. So social search is vastly improved in 2010. For example, in a merger scenario, if you've ever been through one, you have new decision structures, new processes, new forms. I needed a business card for this conference, and I needed to figure out how to expedite that because I didn't have 14 days. So I found the person on SharePoint, and not only did I find her, she wrote a document on how to do it. I published it on SharePoint. Now everyone knows how to get a new business card. And of course, greatly improved search with FAST and improved record centers and content organizer rules. I presented it in Vegas at the SharePoint conference in 2009, and we were talking about internal and external ECM at Continental. And the first question after, the first question after my session was, are we using record centers? And in 2009, we were not. Is Howard here? Howard? No. So anyway, thank you, Howard, for that question. It was a great question. At the time, the answer was no. Active content is active, or it's disposed of, right, per the record retention rules. Now, we are not only using record centers, we are using multiple record centers, and Brian's going to show you that in a few minutes. Okay, governance. How did we get here? Adoption. Our adoption rate is incredible. SharePoint has gone viral in a good way at United. Users are empowered. Okay, so some scenarios lock users down to make them follow a certain path. We have enabled our users to discover. Yes, they make mistakes, but here's one example of user empowerment. So about 2 weeks ago, a guy called me and he says, hey, Denise, I have this InfoPath form and it's working great. Only users outside of headquarters can't get to it. And I said, what's the form do? Well, it's to request a hotel for mainframe training. Oh yeah? Who's your target audience? Well, 6,000 people. Where's the form? On my site? Okay, yeah, my team who's here knows it's true. I can't make this stuff up. So I said, we can help you. We're going to move this over to a more appropriate location. And that's the best requirements document you're ever going to see is a fully functional InfoPath form that a user, airport operations, not even technology, developed this form, and all we had to do is republish it to a more appropriate location. That's user empowerment. Okay, so we do have trainings, resources, computer-based training, FAQs, brown bags. We have team PowerShell classes. That's so cool. And the community. They tell two friends, and they tell two friends, and it just works. And so users do make mistakes, but we have backups. You have to let them discover because they know their business processes. I don't know operations. I don't know, whatever. So the user has a little bit of training, and then they are empowered to do what they know they need to do for their business unit. We do, and here's something very important, we do guide user behavior with our site provisioning process. They're given a site that has structured templates and defaults, document libraries that have a default content type that enables our ECM process. So on uploading a document or a new document, there are defaults that are driven by the site. For example, the division, the physical location, that when the site is provisioned, those defaults are set. The user can change it. They can add more metadata, but they're given a certain level of metadata just by being a part of that site. So what is that bias? Well, ECM gives you the ability to leverage your data and aggregate your data, and it improves search dramatically. So in 2007, we had one site definition, and it was one size fits all rubber stamped. In 2010, we have web templates, and so we can provision sites for projects, quick collaboration sites, applications. So we have all kinds of different flavors of sites in the new 2010 model, and Brian's going to show us that. So we're talking ECM. What is ECM? Well, of course, we all know it's enterprise content management. Well, what's that? Okay. A business must effectively manage the content to allow the business to achieve its goals, right? So and ECM tools help manage the complete life cycle of content. We're talking creation, use, and disposal. On your own desktop, you create a document, you use it, and it sits there. No one else can get to it. You know where it is, maybe. And then it sits there and it kind of stacks up. So what do? We use ECM to help manage content for the whole enterprise. So to do that, we need taxonomy. So what is taxonomy? We're building a framework for organizing the data. Taxonomy, AIM tells us down here, is a formal structure for information based on the individual needs of a business. Gives categorization tools to automate, keyword automate, placement of content for future retrieval. This involves structured content types, documented information panels, templates, and information policies, and we're going to demo that for you in several different scenarios. Now we're taking that taxonomy work we did in 2007, and we're defining that for the combined companies. For example, we're unifying our Active Directory site structure across the two companies, and that results in a composite where we can say, show me everything on Delhi, because it's normalized, and I'm going to show you that. And we get technology and user data in one mashup. So how do you start this process? So how do you start? So you start by classifying what you already have. Taxonomy is basically a list of lists, right? Different types of lists. So we had our list of airports and our list of business units and divisions. And in 2007, we had, like I said, we had to replicate those across site collections. In 2010, we have one list. So we define that list, and it's single source. For manage metadata fields, a column, and a content type hub for our content types. So you have this enterprise level content types, and that only define your enterprise level content types at that level. Don't try to define everything for each business unit at the top level, because it's an impossible task to try to define everything before you start. So use your legal department's existing record retention policy as a great starting point for your content types. And okay, so it's hard to get agreement. So you have to draw a line in the sand and say, let's start here, because we had 11 different sources of address information or naming convention. And so you have to say, okay, here's what we propose. And if it's like the promotion of the folksonomy to the corporate taxonomy, if you have a change that you want to float up to the top, let's agree on it. But we have to start here. We have to start somewhere. So, like I said, only define columns in the term store and content types in the hub that are for use globally, right? And limit the number of choices so a user does not get overwhelmed. If you see 1,400 items in a drop-down, you're not going to select everything. It's going to be generic. And then what good is that? Okay, so this is a screenshot of our technology project process, which this is used for technology projects across all of United Airlines. For example, we need to open a new airport in Albuquerque. How many servers and workstations do we need? What bandwidth? How many flights a day do we have? We define all of that in the design proposal summary, which is a content type. These are Word documents with a document information panel, and then there's workflow behind it. We have network engineering work order. All of these things that you're seeing on the drop-down are content types, which have all the property, the collection of site columns, document information panel, Word template. And support plan is an info path form. It works in a very similar way. This is defined on the site collection level, not the enterprise level, because you wouldn't need design proposal summary for all of United. Although it's used for all of United, it's specific to the technology project process. So how does this work? This is the document information panel, and I can not emphasize this enough. Drop-downs promote standardization. For example, when we started service to Delhi, India, the airport is DEL, that's an international standard. Someone decided to name the city ticket office IXP. How can I relate DEL and IXP? There's no relation. So what we do is we say, show me DEL and then AP, and DEL CT for CTO, MX for maintenance. And so we start to say, okay, show me everything for Denver, and then everything lines up. So you give the user a drop-down. There's no IXP on this menu. So, and then what happens is the user selects the project number, the site code, the document type, and it starts to concatenate the title. And then when they go to save the document, the title actually is concatenated and drives the document file name for standardization and that extra level of sort of information about the document. And it's all, that's what we were talking about in the automation of ECM. This is some of our architectural review process documents. And so this is an example of where we have site collection level information, site columns, and where we have enterprise level managed metadata fields. So this is the site collection level. These are content types that we just saw in the previous screen. Design proposal summary here, network engineering work order. So that's site collection level. This is enterprise level. This is our list of airports, right? So there's a need for both, but you can use both. So you have to, it's kind of scope. You have to look at where something belongs and define it on the right level. Demo. Okay, so what do you get when you do all this work, right? So you can, okay, so now I'm going to try to flip over here to, oh, there we go. Okay, so this is our virtual Earth. Okay, so here are all our 371 airports plotted on a Bing map. And all of those documents that you saw going through that process, through the architectural review engineering process, this is picking up, so who flew into SNA? Anyone? Yes? Yes? I did. Okay. So let's see what airport information we have for SNA. Give me just a second here. San Diego, SNA, John Wayne Airport. So say you didn't know the city code was SNA. Who knew that the city code was Santa Ana, Orange County, Anaheim, what do you call it? But you can find it on a map, right? So here's what we have for Santa Ana, city code, city name, etc., the address. We have architectural review committee documents. These are hyperlinked. Ooh, look at that. Additional check-in kiosks for Honolulu departures. Some of those 20 flights a day leave out of John Wayne Airport. And these are the Active Directory sites. Here's the map where we all flew into. Servers. This is from a SQL Server database from SCCM, which goes out and polls the servers and workstations. And let's see how many workstations, 37 workstations in SNA. And these all meet the naming convention. These are in the airport. Okay. So this is the result of ECM. This is the result of normalizing the naming convention, workflow, content types, all of these different documents, design proposal summary, WAN engineering work order. So we can then start to see how we can aggregate and leverage that data. And for your future reference, I included screenshots in the deck for you to refer to later. And, oops, sorry. And so this quote, show me everything about Beijing. So there it is, all on one view. And we have users as well. Okay, so now Brian Culver is going to tell us about how we went from 2007 to 2010. And he's going to compress a year-long document lifecycle into 3 minutes.
How's everybody doing today?
Are you on?
How's everybody doing today? Good. So when we were looking at this, we were looking at two different things. We're looking at actually upgrading our implementation, and we kind of took a moment to revisit it and look at how we're going to do ECM, leveraging the 2010 features. So when we sat down and we looked at the business problems, what we found is we wanted to improve security. And part of that, one of the solutions that we decided on was to kind of restructure the content by understanding the usage patterns. You know, we've been using SharePoint for many years. by revisiting it, we were able to identify, talk to different groups and identify how they're using the content and better understand these things to really try to break up the security and simplify it because it had become a nightmare. We also wanted to, do some lessons learned, improve user data, the metadata that we're getting. In some cases, we found that certain fields were never being populated. We also wanted to look at governance, what 2010 features were going to be available to us that we could leverage and further improve the governance policies that were already in place. We also wanted to improve the navigation because once we went through the restructuring process, we knew that things were going to be moved around and we wanted people to still be able to find their content, the sites, and anything that they were looking for more easily. The key thing is that we wanted to preserve and improve the user adoption and furthermore and continue empowering the users. Let me try something real quick. Okay. So the key to all this was actually sitting down and understanding our content and how is it that we work with it as a business. And as Denise mentioned, there's different domain experts, so we actually had to talk to the business quite a bit about these. So one of the conclusions, again, was separating the content. How many of y'all would say have really bad security problems or have gone to a site where you're trying to understand the security and it's very complex because you've ended up with over 30 SharePoint security groups? Just a quick poll. All right. This is a common problem, and we definitely experienced it. And so one of the key things that we sat down and we talked about is that some sites had grown into applications or very dependent portals where users were coming for information, and so we really wanted to try to understand how are these sites being used. Once we started understanding that, what we came up with was kind of this model where we're breaking it up. And so our approach became breaking it up by publishing sites, the departmental sites where essentially this is our corporate site where all users have read access. And then as you go into the different divisions and departments, you're going to have AD security and breaking it up. It kind of mimics the hierarchy of the company, that corporate structure. Then we have our collaboration sites that are tied to those divisions. What we started was essentially we had kind of these divisional sites and they'd created child sites where they're collaborating. But again, it started mixing and matching that security, so it was real complex and sometimes really hard to administer that. We also have another one for formal project sites, anything that has a project number. Then ad hoc collaboration sites. For example, the My Site, we still wanted to encourage that use where anybody could spawn up a site and work and do whatever they wanted to do. But we wanted to give them a sandbox, not necessarily the My Sites. Then we also, when we became a Tier 1 app, we wanted to identify which are the mission-critical sites that are being really used more as an application, not necessarily just informational, but essentially a portal where it's got a specific purpose and everybody was approaching these sites. As Denise mentioned, there's the technology project review process, which, this is again how they provision equipment to airports from the business request all the way through the technical delivery. And it's very complex, believe me. Then there's the operational dashboards where they're given, we're getting all these real-time status reports and there's alerts being sent out that provide information on any airport or any flight event that's going on, that being weather or anything that's going on with the airports that's important to the business. And then there's also the talent selection process where, again, the United is composed of two companies merging together, so there had to be a way of working through that process. And the talent selection process was about approving all the job descriptions and merging the company and helping all 87,000 employees find their place in the company. So we also, this time we're using record centers, so we're happy to demonstrate our web application. And of course we have the My Sites for all personalization. So to understand this a little bit better and kind of some of the basic governance rules that we looked at, again, Portal is kind of our corporate site, and so we established some rules. In this case, since it mimics the corporate structure, these sites tend to have an indefinite life. And what that means is that Part of our ECM approach was we need to dispose of sites, not just content, but a site is also should have a life itself. So in the corporate structure, unless there's a merger or something drastic changing, the sites are going to have an indefinite life, and they may even still exist. We just may rearrange them in a different structure. So we really don't have a retention policy specified for those particular sites. We also specify site owners that tend to be divisional heads or business owners, whichever is specific to the department or the division. These, we define them as publishing sites. We didn't want any sub-site creation because, again, one of the lessons learned was that when we allowed the sub-site creation, we ended up having all these collaboration sites under the divisional site, and we wanted to move people to the right place for these things. We also manage security by AD groups. Again, it's very often that HR will manage adding new employees to the proper divisional group if they're hired into HR, whatever group they're hired into. So this has a natural fit where users, once we set up the structure, they have access to the proper sites just through the everyday business process. And the key thing is that these sites are not used for collaboration. So our next web application, this is where all our divisional collaboration is happening. Every site that's created has an association with that division. And therefore, when they go to the corporate site, one of the techniques that we use FAST for was to identify, FAST is very good, by the way. I'm not necessarily pitching it, but we're using it in the sense that we're able to use it to security trim who has access to what sites. And through this association of the division, we're able to say, when you go to the division site, you can say, what sites do I have access to, that is collaboration sites that I have access to that are part of this division. And that can go there, and it's all based, again, on their security. So they're only going to see what they have access to, but it's on a different web application. This is going to be the same model, where the division is going to have a business owner. This is also managed through the AD security groups. Now, there's going to be cases where they're going to collaborate with other groups or other divisions, and so anything that's handled through that is going to be through SharePoint security groups. And again, these are our collaboration sites. The key thing that I also want to emphasize is that these are also kind of our more business, high-level impact sites, because we also created that ad hoc where we're not necessarily worried about backing up all those sites. And so we have a topology where we're failing over between Chicago and Houston. We wanted to prioritize what was more important and business critical. Our collaboration, basically all ad hoc collaboration happens here. So we have the My Sites. In order to try to prevent users from creating too many sub-sites under the My Sites, we decided that it was going to be useful to disable the sub-site creation and, again, redirect them back to the ad hoc collaboration web application. And this is also one of the areas where we decided that we want to encourage users to put all their temporary data there. But we also want them to be able to tag any corporate data there so that through the retention policies, it will find its way to the record centers if needed. So the record center, these also have an indefinite life. In our model, we decided to create multiple record centers, and they mimic the same structure as the divisional structure so that we could route the documents to the proper divisional record centers. Because our legal team is assigned to handle those in that structure already. So it was a very nice fit for us. Actually, I also wanted to mention that we do have some record centers, and there's specific situations where it may not fit that divisional structure, but we may have hundreds of thousands of documents that still need to be archived and stored and disposed of properly. So we do create record centers as needed for those things as well. And finally, we have the services web application where, again, this is more of an application. Some are literal applications like the talent selection, the technology review process, and these tend to be tier 1 mission critical applications as well. We wanted to put them somewhere. And one of the things I do want to mention is that even though the security is managed through the AD groups, these tend to have more of a role-based security. So that was one of the drivers for identifying these things. Where is it not so much divisional, but it's really more of a role based on how it's being used. So I wanted to talk about some of the kind of the things that we've learned and how we're implementing these things. I do want to emphasize that our approach to this was to look at this from the perspective that we really wanted to leverage the platform as much out of the box as possible without customizing it too much. And if we had to customize it, it was really automating the steps of configuration without really only filling in gaps where we really had to. So we're leveraging the managed metadata service, and we are clearly using the term store and the content type hub and BCS as well. But what I wanted to emphasize here is that you'll notice that on the top box we have the active. What we did was to work with the legal department and make it real clear when something was a record and when it wasn't. But we defined anything that's not in the record center is not a record. And so we defined our active document lifecycle versus our record retention document lifecycle. And so what we do is that we're using the content type syndication to kind of push out that active document lifecycle. And then at some point, our active lifecycle is really about how does it become a record? How do we go through this recordization process? And once it becomes a record, it's going to find its way into the record center. Once it hits the record center, it's declared into a record, and then the proper records retention policies are applied at that point. The key difference here, which I'll be showing in a minute, is when we're applying the active policies on the content types themselves, where once they hit the record center, we're applying them on the different record centers and at the different target libraries so that they inherit those proper retention policies. And they're managed by the legal department in those different record centers. And as I mentioned earlier, this was kind of done simultaneously as part of our upgrade process to 2010. So one of some of the key metrics that we went through, we started out with 191 content databases. We actually went through a process of, once we define our structure, we had to restructure our content. We actually took 191 content databases down to 68. We actually saved a tremendous amount of space through that process also. We also, but before I get into that, I want to emphasize that when we reviewed the governance process, we really, again, wanted to stay out of the box as much as possible. So one of the key things that we're leveraging is this idea of the web template. And for how many of y'all have seen or know what a sandbox solution is? Okay. So web template in 2010 is when you go to the site settings and you say save site as a template, it's basically a sandbox solution. And so some of the presentations have talked about the different features. A sandbox solution supports about 95% of the functionality that you would have if you had a form solution. So it's actually very, very powerful. And from that perspective where you can build a site and then save it as a template and not having to do anything else, you've got essentially a near no-code solution for building a site definition. So we moved away from the original site definition that we had in 2007, and we decided to leverage the web templates. So part of the provisioning process is about allowing users to define what their site should be, save it as a template, and just applying it into our process. But one of the other things that we wanted to handle was clearly the ribbon is one of the newest features in 2010. And for those of you that haven't seen Windows 8, the ribbon is everywhere now in Windows 8. So that'll be interesting as well. But we really wanted to kind of gently move people towards our upgrade. So what we did is when we looked at 2010, we looked at the new features, clearly the ribbon, and we also wanted to improve our navigation. What we did is we completed our branding for 2010. Then we not rolled it back, but we built it for 2007. And so the only delta between the two was really the ribbon. So we went ahead and deployed the new look and feel, and took all the help desk calls and everything. It wasn't too bad. And then that also allowed us to do is when we upgraded, people really didn't see any change, so we could focus on. For us, it's really important to make sure that we maintain that user adoption. So we worked with the different groups and, used the visual upgrade to gently upgrade everything and bring in the ribbon and such. We also added, so governance is about managing risk, so we wanted to make sure that this time around site owners really understood how to use SharePoint, so we applied some basic training that we knew that once they had completed their training, they could create sites with a more gentle approval process. Let's see. We also, as far as the governance, we also wanted to make sure the web templates support where you can build your library, set up your content types, and all the policies. And when you save it as a template, it all works. It's all ready for you. Users will be using the right content types on the different libraries and such. It's very useful. I would suggest looking at it. And so when we went to implement the content type hub, I do want to share a big lesson learned actually, is that anything that you created as a content type that's a feature, those features have to be activated at anywhere where you expect to be using them. SharePoint doesn't complain whether you do or you don't. So part of the provisioning process is making sure the features are activated before the web templates are applied. And it's not too bad, but the key thing is that we're using the content type hub to really push those information policies and apply the active policies everywhere where we need them so that everything that should become a record does become a record. Let's see. So I want to roll back a little bit and talk about the high, medium, low service levels. And again, the site provisioning, it was very important for us to identify what should be replicated between the forms, what should be the service level. As you grow, some companies will adopt this idea that you have call centers, you got to charge back to the call center, and we've kind of started looking at that. We haven't gone there yet, but now we can support it. But the most important thing, since we're failing over between the two forms, we wanted to make sure that if in the event of a failure, we would have up the mission-critical applications and sites up and running as soon as possible. So the site provisioning process helps us identify these things, and when we restructured our content, we also use that to drive that. So the site provisioning process starts off with an info path request form. It's very basic. We're capturing some content, but it's enough content for us to look at, who are the stakeholders, who are the key players, what is it that they want, and get some information so that we can review it. And if it's, if it's an ad hoc site, sometimes we'll just say yes, but sometimes we'll look at it and we know that they're really trying to create a site, but when we look at it, we know this is a real big initiative. Like, I need a site to load 10 terabytes of documents, right? That's not going to be an ad hoc site. So we really, really wanted to, have a process in which we could kind of identify those and maybe reclassify them if we needed to, and make sure we identify them as business critical. The site provisioning also applies site quotas. We're also managing our storage. Anytime, anybody's loading a lot of content, we really wanted to be more proactive about identifying these situations and helping them meet their business needs in the proper location so that, again, we're failing it over properly. And in our case, it really matches up nicely because we did high, medium, low. High being obviously tier 1. That usually, in our case, has to be up in 24 hours. Anything medium would be 7 days, and anything low can be greater than 7 days, which could mean anything. And this also allowed us to kind of separate our storage and, as far as performance and how we handle whether it should be log shipped or just backed up and such. All right. So in all truth, the demo, I've tried to streamline it. It's about 15 minutes, but I'm going to show you all some of the key screens. Let's see. So what I'm actually doing here is I kind of want to show you all the kind of the basic setup for doing this in SharePoint out of the box. And so in central administration, one of the first things you got to do is identify where are your record centers. And on the drop-down when you're on a document, you can send it to something. You can send it to a record center, and this is broken up on a per web application basis. And so what we've done is for all the regular web applications, they all send it to the same primary record center. And let's see, so that's what that looks like. And then within the record center itself, in this case, I'm just trying to show a subset of the data, but what we did is we identified every division, and then we have a record center per division. So within the record center, once everything becomes a record, then it's rerouted to the different divisional record centers. And so we define both of those. Within the content type hub, we have our 2007 content types, and what we did is we leveraged the same code and the structure that had been built previously, but what we added here and what we're using the MMS for is really pushing out policies. Oops. And so really I'm using this as a basic example. One of the things that we wanted to do, what is our default policy? And our default policy, I'm making something up, is, let's say it's a year. Anything that hasn't been touched in a year just simply becomes a record. That's not true for all content types. There are content types where we know that they need to stick around longer, maybe project content types and such. I know email's treated differently as well. But once we define these things, this is how we defined our active policies. So our goal in any of the active web applications was getting these documents into the record center. Once they hit the record center, they actually become records. They're declared as records. I'm sorry. A second. So that's our content type hub. And so, for example, if we're in here, and so once the managed metadata service has resynchronized, which it does on an hourly basis out of the box, what you're going to find is that all documents will inherit that process. And if you see the compliance details, I don't know if y'all can see that, it picks up on the different retention policy. Now, I also want to point out that this was really beneficial to us because, again, this is Continental and United Airlines, which have two different content types. And what we're using, we're also merging the different content types into a new one where it's a united content type. So in this case, it happens to be a core document. And so once it gets to the record center, and I'll show this in a second, we're using the rules to merge the content types where it becomes a united document. So it was very nice because we didn't have to relabel anything or change the structure to anything. It really supported all the full feature set as it was already built. So, what I was hoping to do was run the timer jump here, but it takes 5 minutes for it to do anything. So what I'm going to say is, the magic happened. And so what we're doing is we would come here to the record center. Once the documents get moved, and by the way, the timer job that that does the routing or implements the policies, it runs once a week. You could actually be more aggressive about it, but again, since we're dealing on policies that at year at a time kind of thing, a week isn't really going to change much. Now, to that point, depending on the document, some documents may require the users to get an email beforehand, because maybe they don't want it to be moved. That's actually the general policy. In my demo, I'm just doing the 1 year thing. But the point is that we're trying to allow the users to say, hey, I don't want it to be moved just yet. And I mentioned earlier the site decommissioning as well. It's the same rule there where the users get an email, they get a couple of spams, and they have several opportunities to prevent that from happening. So I know this is hard to follow, but the key thing is that here we have our primary record center. The primary goal of this record center is really to capture the documents as they're coming into the record center, declare them as a record. And the reason I mention that is because when we went through this effort, in order to declare a record outside of a record center, you have to turn on some of the in-place records management features. And we really didn't want to do that because in our case, we just didn't find in-place records management as something that we wanted to enable everywhere. We just felt that it would complicate data and basically the usage patterns. So once the document comes in here and the policy kicks in, let me see for this one. So you'll see that anytime anything comes in here, the first thing that happens, within a day, it'll be declared as a record. And the second thing that happens is anything, and this document actually originally came in as a COER document, it becomes relabeled as a UA document, or United Airlines. And once it does that, the timer job will also pick it up within a couple days and then move it to the proper record center. In this case, I'm going to use the Flight Operations Record Center. And once the documents come in here, they'll sit in the pending submission, or the drop-off library. It's actually the same library. And then they get rerouted to the proper libraries once they're ready, and then they'll have the different policy for disposition at this point. Which in this case, basically, well, if they weren't already declared as a record, because some users can move them directly into these things or upload them, it gets declared as a record. Second thing is, due to some of the policies, some documents will not be deleted automatically. We wanted user interaction before the documents would be deleted, but they get moved to the recycle bin, or they get an email, or whatever it is that we need them to do. Let's see. That's about all that I'm going to show there. Well, and we do have the content organizer, so I'll show that real quick. One of the benefits in breaking it up into the different divisions is that the way the legal documents were written is that there's the general content types, the general file plan, and then they broke it into every division, which is actually, again, why we structured it the way we wanted to, and then they could come in here and generate a file plan that matched up with their legal document on a per division basis. So it was really, really handy for all of us to do that. And that's about it for that. Let me go back to the slide. Some of this may be redundant. As Denise mentioned, we wanted to include some of these things so that you could look over it. Yeah. See, we went over this one. Went over this one. So this is actually the content type rule, or content organizer rule, where you define. It's not working here, but I know it's not visible here. What I've done is I've defined two different content types to merge into one. So I defined that the UA document content type and the COER document content type will both fall under the UA document content type, which is how it gets labeled into the one content type as it comes into the record center. And then down here on the target location, it specifies the new record center that it's going to be rerouted to. Let's see, we've gone through all this already. So one of the key things that I wanted to focus on is that the new structure allowed us to move documents into the record center, which also allowed us to empower the records managers and the different end users to manage their records once they got to the record center. And we're leveraging FAST so that they can also find their documents wherever they are. FAST, we used it so that we could improve that built-in knowledge, that domain knowledge in the company, find business cards, or how to order them, and find a different expertise. Actually, I know firsthand Denise gets called all the time as, "Are you the SharePoint guru?" And, we're... What is it? I know nothing about SharePoint. We never heard of it. We don't advertise it as much. So FAST also, we're, as a global company, you're dealing with people with, they may spell things differently. FAST has been very key to helping us deal with the, different spellings and different phonetic matchings for different terms, and managing our keywords. Deep refinements when you have rich metadata, the deep refinements are very useful for doing a search and then refining your search further. The contextual search, we actually really have enjoyed this feature because me as a SharePoint person, when I do a search, I know that the same search terms will help me identify something that's more pertinent to me because I tend to do SharePoint searches. One of the funny things that we found, we had a user that was complaining about they kept getting search stuff, and well, I mean SharePoint results, and the reason is that in their user profile they had put down that I like SharePoint, but they didn't realize the impact that was going to have, because what that does is that now that becomes part of the search criteria as part of this contextual search. So she's like, I don't understand why I keep getting all these search documents. I'm not part of the IT group. So it was one of those funny stories that we came across. And let's see, we use the term store to standardize keywords, which again, when we do these searches, it's critical because people aren't misspelling things. Everything is more consistent, especially as a global company. That's really, really important, actually. Let's see. And finally, I wanted to point that all legal holds happen in the record center, specifically in our model. And I think this is yours.
Okay, thank you, Brian. All right, okay, so we've come a long way from, how do we get here? What does it take to make this happen in terms of resources? So this started with 2 people part-time as a server under the desk. So basically, my boss gave me a SharePoint 2007 DVD, a box, and 1,000 documents and said, see what you can do with this. Now it's a 24/7 business critical tier 1 application for the world's largest airline. So how did we build that? Over time. We didn't build that in one fell swoop. Agile. And my boss, in welcoming one of my new employees to the team a couple days ago, said United Airlines views SharePoint as a strategic technology because of its agility and time to market. We can spin up applications and functionality extremely quickly. So build it and see what works, and then build on top of that. And we roll out processes over time. We started by working on the engineering design review process, the technology project process, and we started with that, and then we learned and built on that. We did contract consultants to assist with the 2007 rollout for our enterprise platform with load balance web front ends, clustered SQL, terabytes of storage and all that, and with the definition of the initial taxonomy, because that's a list of lists. And so after the merger, United has recognized the value of SharePoint to the organization, so the full-time engineering resources have quadrupled. We have dedicated application support, of course the help desk and server management, which manages the operating system and the hardware layers. We do contract additional resources on a per project basis, and one of the many projects that we're working on has a documentable ROI of $1 million, because the managing director of this group came to me and she says, I need your help in this. This really needs to be in SharePoint. And I said, I have so many projects going on. She says, no, I'm going to write a check. Here's the document. This SharePoint is the right tool for this. This is the kind of adoption and the way United has embraced this technology. This is the right solution. Okay, lifecycle management. This is extremely important. We have development, staging, and production environments. We have coding standards and code reviews, quality assurance testing, and Team Foundation Server source control. We have leveraged Hyper-V and virtualization, extremely useful for us. We have a private cloud in Hyper-V 2012 for our development environments, and we can spin up virtual servers as needed, and that's very useful. We support various groups, including ourselves, and sandbox site efforts. The core SharePoint team works on farm-level solutions, and our business unit development teams can play in their own sandbox solutions. Key learnings from this journey, this process, evolve as you go. Like I said, you can't. Waterfall method is not viable. You have to roll something out, let the business unit give you feedback, see what works, and continue with what is working. In the operations dashboard model, what we did was we started small, and we said, okay, they have weather event or something's going on in an airport or with a flight. We're going to email 200 people in a distribution list. We did one thing, and that was create a SharePoint document library and added a 201st email to that distribution list. Now we're starting to log those emails in a document library, and we can start to build our list of events that we need to put on a drop-down list or in checkboxes. So there's no change for the users. They just email their same distribution list, but we start to log and centralize that existing content. In phase 2, we created structured SharePoint list from that data that we had aggregated in the library, and we created now the operations managers and directors click New, flight number, origin, destination, and I'll show you that in a minute. And so we can create log these items in a SharePoint list and send targeted alerts. And this content type, the operations log content type, now allows the automated exploration of list items after 13 months, which is how long the FAA requires us to retain these logs. And in phase 3, in 2009 when I presented this, phase 3 was still, off in the future. We have done phase 3, integrated mainframe operations data. Now, when an airplane blocks out, there's an event that goes to a data warehouse. And so you block out of the gate to take off. If it's greater than 90 minutes, the DOT has said they're going to fine us $27,500 if the plane sits on the tarmac for more than 3 hours. So it goes from avionics to SharePoint, and I'll show you that in just a second. Okay, so this is the demo. One. SOC. This is fine. Okay, so this is public. This is anyone in United Airlines. Any of the 87,000 of us can get to this page. This is public, and this is hey, what's going on with operations, weather, and this is from our data warehouse on time performance. This is a sort of composite, if you will, of maps. This is live data today, 5th of October at 2200 GMT. Don't know. Oh, turbulence problems. So here's what's going on in South America and Central America and India. Ooh, India looks good. Look at that. In Mexico, all clear in Mexico. Okay, cool. Okay, so that's public. Anyone in United can get to that. Our operations center is locked down. This is where everything is going on, right? So these are operations director alerts. These are alerts that are sent to everyone, including the CEO. Probably about 2,000 people get these alerts. Diversion, weather conference call, et cetera, et cetera. Flight irregularities. This list this dashboard was rolled out in 2009, early 2010, and it was rolled out, and this is what I was talking about. That was rolled out to high fives and cheers on the operations floor, because this data used to be emailed out in distribution lists, and the only record they had of it was to copy and paste from the mainframe logs into paper that was printed out and stored in file folders in the Director of Operations file cabinet to be thrown away 13 months later. Now they go to create a log. And, okay, so you can do it one of several ways. So we have your drop-downs. Drop-downs promote standardization. Airline, Continental, United. We are two separate carriers right now for the next month until we get what's called single operating certificate. So we still have to select which carrier, and I'll talk more about that in a second. Aircraft number, origin, destination. Again, our managed metadata field, centralized list of airports, right? And then the type of operation, event type. This is what we gathered from our aggregation of the emails to the document library, air return, catering, and this is my favorite, volcanic ash. And people ask me, well, why would you need to put volcanic ash on the drop-down or make a checkbox? How often does that really happen? With our SharePoint list now, I can tell you about every 2 months. Mexico, Argentina, Iceland. Now everything on Flight 1. Show me everything on Newark. Show me everything on Tuesday the 21st. We have that data all aggregated together. This dashboard, the Managing Director of Operations says that this dashboard right here, it's not glorious, it's not anything, it's just data. He said that this paid the ROI for the whole entire SharePoint 2007 rollout because they didn't have to spend 20 hours a week copying and pasting mainframe data into logs that are printed on paper. The entire platform was paid for with this dashboard. I think that's amazing. And we get, aircraft runway configurations in Newark and IH. Like I said, this dashboard this is the Continental dashboard. United saw this. We were two separate carriers until we get a single operating certificate, probably next month. United saw this and they said, this is 90% of the way there to what we need. And can we have this? Can we have? Of course you can. So we created this in 2 weeks. The managing director of operations and I brainstormed on this for about a year, and then we created it. And when we started to merge, United said, this is great, we need it, okay, you can have it. So we created their version in 2 weeks, and they sunsetted or discontinued use of 4 legacy systems when they started to use this. Okay, so back to the presentation. Okay, so, and for your handy-dandy reference, I have included a screenshot. And this is a list item. And that's the dashboard. And when they spin up an event, it sends a targeted alert to whoever wants the alert. Like I said, about 2,000 people, including the CEO. And so, for example, one user managing director wanted only to know about events on flights from Newark to Frankfurt. So she created a view, Newark to Frankfurt, and she gets alerts on only when the origin is Newark and the destination is Frankfurt. That's how granular we can get with the alerts. Okay, so now that this is a Tier 1 application for the operations dashboard and many other reasons, like Brian was telling you about, and everything else. What does it take to make a Tier 1 application? So redundant farms, one in Chicago in our headquarters, and the redundant farm in Houston. And so the failure I talked about in early spring was caused by bad code in a third-party product, which I mentioned it allowed the user to inadvertently create this condition with the data. So to prevent this, we have the same topology, the same farm structure in both data centers, but also, we create a secondary SQL instance in each data center so that we can fail over to the secondary instance before that, so that we don't have to go find that data-caused error and remove it before it shuts down the farm. So this happens. So this is what we've done to prevent it. So we have our governance where we test the code and we make sure that we know how to back it out. I have a slide on that in a second. But also we have this failover mechanism to prevent in case that condition occurs again. So here's our Tier 1 topology, Chicago and Houston. Chicago is primary. We do log ship across the wide area network, and we load balance across the WAN. And like Brian was saying, our high and medium service level sites such as services, the applications, and all that. The low service level sites, the collaboration sites. Hey, I want to collaborate with my buddies on Wi-Fi on the aircraft. And so that relies on traditional backup mechanisms, and we can fail over between the data centers with scripts in about 15 minutes. Okay, so key learnings from this process. Simplified security model, like Brian was telling us, separate the site collections by security boundaries and service level, and group the data logically by site collection type. Really facilitates the management of content and security. Just much more streamlined. Supportability. Synchronize with Microsoft's roadmap. What we found in the 2010 upgrade process was that we had to pull back custom code and third-party tools and things that we had done that really didn't fit. 2010 gives us that out of the box, and so we ended up having to pull that back in the upgrade process. And also, something that doesn't follow the object model or the roadmap, you'll end up gaining very small gains, and your support costs are going to skyrocket. Okay, key learnings. Fully review custom code and third-party tools. Know how it's deployed and how it's supported. Are they going to be there to answer the phone at 7 p.m. when you call? Know how to back it out. It needs all solutions, custom or third-party, must be deployed as a WSP, a solution. If you have to install something on each web front end separately, don't do it. Just personal experience. Understand what is content and what is code, because content is everywhere, and then code has to be installed in each web front end, all the SharePoint servers. Governance, the site provisioning really helps us help the users help us with enterprise content management. What is enterprise content management bias? Search is greatly improved. You can leverage and aggregate your data, and everything works together. Automate with PowerShell. I heart PowerShell. I love PowerShell. If you have to do something to 396 sites, boy, doing it, click, 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 that's going to take you forever. PowerShell, you're there. It's magic. Okay, key benefits. Boy, the slide is not big enough for the key benefits. Okay, paperless. We're moving to the Sears Tower, Willis Tower, downtown. Some of our departments are moving. So they don't have closets in expensive downtown real estate to store cabinets of documents, file cabinets. So we're scanning closets of documents into record centers. 14 sub-departments in aircraft engineering and aircraft records are scanning documents into record centers. We're saving paper and printing costs. We're flying airplanes on biofuel, and we're saving paper. Environmental is no longer sending around a 4-inch thick binder of rules for compliance. It's all on SharePoint. E-discovery. Users can find what they need quickly and accurately on a security trend basis. Brian showed us about search and about fast. Legals can find what they need for e-discovery. Users can find what you need, like business cards. Record retention policy. We are helping legal help us comply with the record retention policy and controlling the growth of all the documents and all the contents. Productivity, off the charts, cost savings, ROI. It's documented over and over. Like I said, the ops director said the dashboard paid for the entire 2007 implementation, by saving that time weekly, copying the logs. And we get the added benefit of all that intelligence about the flights and what's going on. And we can auto-expire the list items after 13 months. We don't have to go to his file cabinet and throw it away. We're saving millions in getting millions of dollars of return on investment, replacing legacy and paper systems over and over. Operations, HR, training. One other example of let the users be empowered and they know what their business need is the legal department called me one day. They always call me with a small issue. And they said, hey, why can't I search on my box number on my list anymore? And I said, well, what are you guys doing? And they said, well, we have 36,000 items in one list, and we're cataloging boxes in, let's call it ironclad storage, banker's boxes. Okay, so yeah, so what they did was they ran the crawl out of memory at 13,000 items, and they had 36,000 items in the list. So they broke it, but it took us, very little time to break it up into a logical per department organization so the crawl would work. And they saved 28,000. They saved 80% of the cost of storage in Iron Mountain because of this initiative they took that I knew nothing about, and they got rid of 28,000 boxes. If that's $1 a piece, that's 28,000 bucks, and I think that ironclad storage is probably more than $1 a box. So huge savings based on the initiative and the empowerment of the business unit being able to do what they need. What's next for us? Where are we going with SharePoint? We're migrating our collaborative content from the intranet sites to SharePoint. We have a governance committee within technology deciding what goes where. We're building high return on investment applications, business critical stuff for DOT, FAA, EPA. We're migrating legacy document management systems. We're going green. We're scanning paper records into SharePoint. We're automating the request of hundreds of virtual machines for our merger process. And with Hyper-V and PowerShell, we're doing all that through SharePoint and that technology provisioning process. United.com in Vegas, they were the other half of my presentation, and they're doing external ECM on Continental.com, soon to be United.com, and they cut down a 2-month workflow to 2 days, and it's published directly from SharePoint on Continental.com, United.com using minimal master page. End-to-end technology projects. We have developed each of these pieces over time, over 4 years. Technology work request. We need to open an airport in Albuquerque. A design proposal summary. These are the content types that I showed you in that drop-down here and here. the technology cost estimate. The pieces we haven't done yet and are on the roadmap are the funding piece and the integration with asset management. So we built all these pieces one by one over time, and we're building more and more pieces, and it all comes together. Okay, so business connectivity. There are a lot of existing sources of data. We don't want to reinvent the wheel. So we have 3 sources of data for network sites. This is big stuff. This is global. Circuit management, Verizon, Sprint, to the 371 airports. There are multiple circuits, each of those airports. It's a lot to manage. So each site has an Active Directory site, a circuit ID, a physical address, a router name. That's that DEL and IXP. How do I normalize that? How do I know that that's in the same location? So all 3 data sources. This is an external third-party circuits billing database, an Oracle source of network sites data, and our Active Directory, which is our database of record. All 3 data sources have an entry point through InfoPath, standardized input, and workflow. Drop-downs promote standardization. You can't select the wrong thing if it's not on the menu. And with business connectivity services, we can synchronize the data and create that composite view like I showed you, show me everything in Beijing, across all 3 systems for the global locations. So show me everything in the circuits billing. What are we being billed for Oslo? What does Oracle show that we should be being billed for? And what servers and workstations, IP subnets are in the Active Directory site? So we're utilizing the United Airlines Oracle database for the source for the managed metadata field of airports. So it's not any longer a question of what SharePoint can do. It's a question of what SharePoint can't do because we are doing so much with it. So Microsoft said it best, but it certainly applies to an airline and anything you want to do in SharePoint. Where do you want to go today? Thank you for flying with us today. And we will entertain any questions. And
anybody who wants to ask questions,
sure,
can go up to the microphone stand. And once we run out of time, feel free to come up front, and we'll be up here.
Or we can, take it out front as well. That front.